has more expertise with Zoom, and we're really trying to help our therapists, and different therapists on our team have different familiarity levels with Zoom and using the controls, and helping to troubleshoot on the moment with patients. So that's been something that we've been dealing with. Also, we're trying to streamline the process for our clients. So one of the things that we've found to be most helpful is to text them a link and having them download the Zoom app before they get that link, so that once they get that link for the call with their therapist, all they have to do is click that, bumps them right to the session, and they can go right into having a therapy session. But getting that to be kind of a regular process for our folks has been, it still is a work in progress. And then there's also a lot of the logistics around clients' connectivity capacity, in terms of Wi-Fi connections, access to technology, things of that sort. But we're trying to be flexible and use phone or other means of communication as much as possible. So those are some of the challenges that we've faced. Oh, and then also just engaging clients on calls. It's a different dynamic, particularly when working with children. I had my first teletherapy sessions on Monday. One was with a child who's, I think, 12, and it's really difficult to engage. A lot of the times it's much more like hands-on work that we're doing with clients, with child clients. So I found myself kind of the session drying up a little bit with the child, and then I switched over to the parent, and still helping the child out, but that side of it worked a little more naturally, I guess. So I wanted to share some of the telehealth principles that we are trying to follow. This is from our telehealth webinar with Latinx populations. Sophia, if you can put that link for folks. We've advertised this on our network. Again, we've tried to put links to it. But it's really a good comprehensive guide on the best practices. Now, a lot of these things are difficult to do under current circumstances. So, but it still provides a good overview of the things you want to keep in mind about how to do therapy and how that is different when you're doing it on video. So, I mean, ideally you'd get training specifically on these things, but none of us have time for that right now. We're just trying to make things work. Making sure we're displaying our credentials. This is something really important to think about, making sure you have an emergency services access or an emergency contact that you are sharing with the client in case you get disconnected or the client becomes suicidal and you are at a distance and you can't, provide that safety right in the moment. Definitely things to keep in mind there. And I'm aware that a lot of folks out there on the call are probably already aware of this stuff and are knowledgeable of it. So want to encourage folks when we get into more of the discussion to share your knowledge and your expertise with this. This is just what we've been using to help us out. I think one of the bigger things is around things like consent for minors, verifying client identity, and then safety within the environment. So making sure that, like, I was talking to my client and he was in the main dining room, and although their family was around, I said, can you move to a different room and close the door and make sure it was private. Doing those kinds of things will help the client to feel a little bit less uncomfortable than they already are in talking in video, and making sure that we're keeping privacy as something that's paramount as we're doing this work. So really just with these things, we just want to point folks in the direction of this webinar. If you have time to kill these days, as we might or we might not, I've found actually that I'm more busy now that I'm working at home. We'll talk about that too, about how to set boundaries between work and our home life, because now those things are in the same place. So yeah, so just making sure that we are taking care of, thinking through these things, taking care of ourselves and taking care of our patients. So we have a resource guide that we're going to share in the chat. So it has a couple of links on there. it has the Center for Credentialing and Education. There's a whole course on telemental health that you can get credentialed with there. It is a bit expensive, but you do get continuing education credits for it. And then there's these different associations, the codes for ethics for telemental health. So you can all definitely check those out and read up on that. And then I wanted to kick it over to our executive director, Luke Smith, and our teletherapy program lead, Mary Elizabeth Rockers, who have been driving the ship as we have transitioned our El Futuro services over to telemental health. So Luke and Mary, if you can both unmute, and if you can just share what this process has been like and some tips or lessons learned that have come along the way.
Well, I'll go first because I'd love to then look to Mary, but I want to give context for who I am. I'm a psychiatrist, and a long time ago in 2009, we started doing video health with Sandhills LME at the time, and it was through a lot of difficulty. The technology wasn't good. And then we kind of slowly got into another relationship with the CCNC, that's the Community Care of North Carolina, and AHEC, and not AHEC, it was KB Reynolds, and they got technology for us, and it was when it was also very expensive. That was in 2015, 16. That's when I got connected with Jonadab, who's on the call today. And we started seeing patients in primary care clinics. He was sending them to the primary care clinic, and that's where we were doing our services. And then we slowly started transitioning over to directly to his clinic, to his office, and doing services into his office. And then about 2 years ago, we received funding from the Office of Rural Health to do work with migrant farm workers with the Farm Worker Health Program. And that's when we really did start to develop systems and procedures. Before that, it was very difficult. And I'd say that if you look at a map of the United States and see who's adopted telehealth legislation and standards within their Medicaid and Division of Health and Human Services, that we were lagging. We were not developing that in North Carolina like other states were. We were one of maybe 10 states that just weren't moving on it. And every time we went to the government, they would say, no, thank you. We actually had legislation last summer in to get telehealth or video health, whatever you want to call it. Now it's like confusing because there's telephone and video, but we had legislation out there for the General Assembly, but it really got behind the Medicaid expansion. And so it ended up not getting passed. And so all of this change that's happened in the last 2 weeks has been like mind blowing in that context. But looking to Mary and to others who are on her team with what we call Telefuturo, but we're telehealth, doing it with the migrant farm worker clinics, and then increasingly with other clinics around the state, other sites around the state, has really been our more significant learning curve. The real challenge now is that in the last 2 weeks, we've tried to go from what was maybe 5 to 10% of our workload at El Futuro for clinical services to 100%. And that's what Juan's talking about, is it's been a lightning fast development. And so what we're doing is we're building the plane and flying it at the same time here at El Futuro. And I imagine that that's been your experience too. Yeah, that's some head nods on that one. So Mary and I, Molly, Juan, even Sophia, I see others on the phone who are contributing to this. We're trying to do our best to put together tips, but I think that as we have our discussions, we've been having these regular meetings at El Futuro, and we're having a lot of conversations. It's amazing to learn from each other. And so it's the true concept of La Mesita. I know that one of our therapists the other day was talking about when her family was helping her over the weekend set up her home studio, now is what it is, not a therapy office, it's a studio. And one of their kids was putting a stop sign on the door so that she could change the stop sign and then allow the kids to know when they can come in and talk to mommy and when they can't come in and talk to mommy. And I was sitting there thinking, that's what I need. So hopefully some of those tips will come up today. We'll have some that are written down. Some will just hear from the general community and will think, oh, that reminds me of something. So we encourage you to unmute your microphones today and join in the discussion, because we really want to have this as a time of learning from each other. Mary, I'm given that context. You've put together a document I think we're going to share with people as we're even talking, or how are we going to do this? What are our logistics here?
I could share my screen, and as I go through some of these tips we put together, I'm happy to share that. I think Sophia would need to give me.
I went ahead and unshared. You can go.
Okay, great. Yeah, and thank you for that context, Luke. Just a quick some background for those of you I don't know. I've been seeing solely, all of my clients have been remote to now, so this is not a difficult transition for me as it might be to others. That said, I do believe there's a lot of some experience on the call, and this is not, what I'm presenting is not an exhaustive list of best practices or tips, but just things that I wanted to highlight and that I've kind of zeroed in on in my own practice as I've transitioned to providing the service out of my home, which is new for me. So let me just share this.
And I would say that Mary's going to take the lead on sharing these things. She's a therapist, I'm a psychiatrist. Mine may have a little bit different procedures, so I can watch for that and comment on that. But most people on the phone today are, I think, therapists and not psychiatrists. So I'll let you be the primary on, or I'll defer, of course.
Great, and I think, like Luke said, this is a work in progress, and we'll share this afterwards and continue to add to this. And this is, I'm part of a whole team at El Futuro, and that's been working on some of this stuff. So I've kind of divided this into different sections. One is some tips prior, and we're using Zoom. Some others might be using different platforms, but prior to the Zoom appointment, in session, some tips on the client introduction and messaging to clients that I've found helpful, and then just some general tips, and then post-session. So I'm not going to read all of these, but just to go through kind of and highlight some of I think the things that stand out to me the most is to have the client prepared ahead of the session. We do have, as Juan mentioned, a video tutorial. It's in Spanish. It's low budget, but I think it does the trick for now of having clients be prepared with the Zoom platform on their phones. And so we can share this link with you if you want. It's on YouTube. Also ahead of the session, one of the best practices Juan highlighted was the safety issue, and especially as now we're beaming into folks' homes, just assessing for who's in the room, what are there any topics that we need to avoid, but also to know their county of residence. So if I call 911 from my house in Durham, that's going to go directly to my Durham emergency dispatch. If I wanted to contact the emergency dispatch in Avery County, then I'm going to want to know that that local number. I think I could eventually get routed there, but you'll save a step, I believe, and having that number you can directly dial if you need to in case of an emergency. So having that county specific emergency dispatch number available prior to your appointment with your client. And then just striving for a professional and private atmosphere. And with the caveat, I do want to say that these are our best practices, but certainly not realistic, especially right off of the bat. So I think we need to be patient and compassionate with ourselves as we make this transition, especially if there are things going on in the house and you know, having that privacy right off the bat it's hard for professionals like us, just as it is for our clients to find that space. So these are kind of the ideal setup here is to present yourself as you would in person, to have the adequate technology and the sufficient internet speed. Headphones can be really helpful for both the client if they have them and for the clinician. And then having kind of, if possible, a kind of a neutral background. So choosing a space in your home where you've got a blank wall or just a neutral space. And then in the messaging to clients, again, confirming that physical location that they're in. If they're a new client, if you've never seen them before, using double identifiers. So for example, asking for both the name and the date of birth. To ensure confidentiality, a lot of my clients have had questions about whether or not I'm recording the session. So I assure them that it's the same standards of confidentiality in my office pertain to the session, the virtual session. Assessing their privacy and their safety. Are they concerned with others in the house overhearing certain things? Is there anyone else in the room I should be aware of? Are there topics to avoid in this particular session? So assessing that kind of at the beginning. Acknowledging, and this is important, and another clinician on this call pointed this out to me earlier in the week. It is helpful to acknowledge that this is a different platform and it's a different type of session, but also not to devalue that, and doesn't mean that it's any less quality or less meaningful of a session. It's just different. So sometimes pointing that out is important, but making sure to treat it and acknowledge it as just as valuable, and in some cases maybe more in this time of social isolation, having this as a tool that we can use.
Mary?
Yes?
This is Magdalena. There's a few questions on the chat on kind of how to do this part specifically with Latinx population. And I thought you might want to share. I also know that a few things that have worked for me have been to tell parents of teenagers that I want to check up with them. And then also that I have found helpful that teenagers go to the room, and I explain it's kind of similar to what we would do in the office, where maybe I would meet individually with them to kind of not create this sense of like, I don't want you to hear what we're gonna say, but more to say, I want to keep the format as similar as we can to what we would do in the office. And for a teenager, that meant going to sit in the car and have a conversation with me. And I think she felt much more at ease. And the parent was very understanding. There's also a question of clients not feeling comfortable. And I think during this first week, it's been helpful for me to say, okay, I understand that. I don't know how long this will be. So how about I check with you in a week? And a few clients that initially were like, no, I don't know about this phone thing, now are saying, well, schools are going to be closed until May. And actually, maybe I am kind of open to talking. So maybe not pushing, but saying, I'm going to stay on touch. To see if maybe they feel more comfortable as this thing extends, and we are highlighting like we want to stay in touch with you.
That's great. Thank you, Magdalena. And the reality I've found just this week, yesterday I had a client with 2 young kids that were in the session with her, and I wasn't asking her to find a private space apart from them, but just acknowledge their presence, and that the reality is that family was important to her, and they're in the room with her just as people come with their families sometimes in session in the clinic.
Mary,
yeah, Luke.
I'll just interject here for a second as well. Even backing up before that, with the actual technology, I know that that's a significant consideration for a lot of people right now. There's been a chat already about Zoom and its HIPAA or its data encryption to be HIPAA compliant. So a couple comments. One is, if you want to chat in what you're using and how much the subscription is, if it's free, great. If how you like it. Like, do you like using this? Has it been user friendly, or you wouldn't recommend it to somebody? Our experience has been with Zoom, because we are using a lot of providers, and we do have a subscription that allows a certain number of providers in, but it's relatively expensive. It turns out to be $10 to $15 per month, and then we can do big sessions like this. The other is that there are internet service providers. One that I know of is Spectrum right now, who have opened up to free internet for people. And so that's helpful for the people we're helping. It's also helpful for us. If we don't have a good internet connection, maybe we can boost our internet signal. And there's, in your internet browser, you can type in speed test, and you want to see what your download and your upload speeds are on your internet at home to really determine, are you going to be able to communicate this way? So that, I think that's a helpful thing. And it usually will say your speed is good enough to do video and music streaming and those types of things on that speed test, which is on a, just type it in with Google. And finally is the question about HIPAA. And I think some people have seen the announcement coming out from first Medicare and then Medicaid, DHHS, saying that they're actually not worried about HIPAA and any platform right now. So if you're using Skype or WhatsApp or FaceTime or whatever, they're actually okay with that. I think what we're all trying to think about is, well, what happens when they say, okay, we're no longer okay with that, and we've just transitioned to a certain software and everybody's gotten comfortable with that, and then they revert out of that. So if at all possible, get into some kind of software that's HIPAA compliant. And so you can see some chats that are coming through right now, but I think that's definitely like one of the first decisions that you have to make is, okay, which one am I going to use, and are they all the same, and how much they cost long-term, and are whatever.
If I can chime in briefly, Luke, that kind of connects to a question that was posted in the chat before. What's going to happen after the crisis is over in terms of telehealth? And I think the hope is that some of these provisions will stick in terms of approved providers. So telehealth was opened up to all licensed clinicians, including licensed professional counselors or licensed clinical mental health counselors and LMFTs. Previously, it was just a resource that licensed clinical social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists could utilize. And we're hoping that some of these expansions will remain as part of the Medicaid service definitions for approved reimbursable services. Certainly the limitations around HIPAA will come back on board once this crisis is over. So it is sort of a, what do you do now versus what might you want to do in the long term if you're going to continue to provide some telehealth services. We actually are right now doing a little bit of a mix in terms of our Zoom accounts. We're trying to get as many HIPAA compliant accounts as we can, but we have some providers like our interns who won't be here after sort of this crisis is over. So we've gone ahead and made the decision to use the non-HIPAA compliant version for them. Although there are some restrictions, there's some data usage restrictions, and you can only have a call, like you couldn't do this kind of call. I think you can only have 3 or 4 people on the call. So it's definitely a pros and cons depending on what your ability is in terms of budget.
Mary, I don't know, I think you still had a few like general tips you wanted to go through.
Sure.
Before we kick it back.
Yeah, and just in the intro, talking about a technology backup plan, and the phone can be meaningful too. So I would say, especially for clients that aren't comfortable or don't have access to the to video, the phone is not just a good backup plan, but can also just be used for the therapy session in certain cases. If the client's using a phone or handheld device, it's an hour or 45-minute session is a long time to be holding a phone. And, you know, I think so many of us are used to video chatting with phones and walking around with one, but it can get make me seasick. I think it's a little dizzy to see the phone being waved around. And so I suggest this, can you find a place where you could maybe prop your phone up so that we can see each other face to face. And that can maybe even be easier, more comfortable for them as well to find a place to prop that up. And then just if it is, because it is a different setting, just acknowledge or go over how long the session you anticipate it going for, and kind of setting that expectation up at the beginning, and then how follow-up will happen. And the general tips, I said this at the beginning, about ourselves, but retaining awareness of the client's realities of participating in therapy from their home. So have kind of an enhanced sense of awareness of the room. They're likely facing distractions. We might even consider shifting our goals for that session to more mindfulness or here and now approaches. So I included kind of a funny video here. If you have time to watch what not to do, it's very comical. These are just some bloopers that have apparently happened at one time or another in telehealth visits. Screen sharing, if you are using Zoom or another platform that allows you to do this, just being cognizant or aware of what you share. So for example, now everyone can see all of my tabs open. So if I had, like something I didn't want you to see on one of those tabs, I would want to just make sure that what I'm seeing, the client is also seeing. So you can have the option to share just a single document usually, or a single web page, especially if there's other private or personal information, client information on your computer. Camera positioning, so just checking to see what the client sees in your window, and you can use your video preview before joining the meeting. Lighting, and these are general tips that you can find. Most telehealth instructional tutorials will tell you that try not to sit in front of a window without having enough light in front of you. Also just being aware of any microphones can be sensitive, so sounds like shuffling paper or typing can be picked up pretty acutely. And then also if you're someone like me that talks with their hands, just knowing that the client is only going to see what's in that window. So avoiding big gestures. Post-session, getting up to stretch, because of that kind of hyper focus on prolonged eye contact and attentiveness with your body, just being easy on your posture and your body, considering mindfulness or transition between visits, because it is easy with video therapy to just go from one visit into another. Whereas in the clinical setting, we might get a chance to walk someone up and down the hallway and get up and stretch. So those are two additional pointers.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I'll just mention a couple more things. I think Jonadab, you mentioned that you found that it's helpful to use the video interface in order to share, like as we've been sharing our screens, like share resources, websites that they can go to, and it's a really good tool for that. So sometimes incorporating that in there. And then something that I think came up in our own meetings is particularly being careful around cases where you're working where domestic violence is involved. The safety issues, definitely something we want to be even more mindful than ever when we're connecting with those types of clients. Can
you hear me?
Yes,
Hi,
go ahead,
Juan,
Jenny.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm the perfect example here because I have my kids with me. So I know both sides, like the client side and also like the therapist side. So and we also work in domestic violence. So it's very difficult for us to talk to our clients and also like keep the privacy and safety for them. So we have been saying that if they have a room apart or a car or they can go into the car, that will be better for them. But it's not so easy. And also with the kids, as you can see, like, so find a time and schedule a time that they can be, that someone else can stay with the kids. But sometimes they are single parents, so it's hard for them.
Thank you, Jenny. And Kenny asked a quick question for new clients. Do we recommend we get informed consent signed? Molly or Luke, I wonder if you guys can jump in. I think we've been approved to get verbal consent. Note that, and then whenever we're able to get back into the clinic with them to get that signed. Am I saying that correctly?
So thankfully, we are getting a little bit of leeway in terms of needing to have written consent from our clients at this time. But that's, again, just temporary. One thing that we are doing in our clinic is we're using the screen share function. and showing clients the documents that they would be signing inside of their medical record. Or maybe it's a PDF copy, and it's just their medical record, so it doesn't have anyone else's PHI in there. But walking through the client, you know, here are your client rights, and here is what confidentiality is about, and here are clinic rules and policies. And then you can also do that with a treatment plan. So here's your diagnosis, and here's your the goals that we talked about. So then we make a note on that actual document that it was reviewed visually over the telehealth platform. And then we make a note in our chart so that we can have that client sign those documents at a later date. Some clients have offered to have that emailed to them or mailed to them, and they can sign it and scan it and give it back to us or mail it back to us. But we don't think that's going to be the majority of our clients. So just documenting that it's been reviewed verbally is enough for the right now. And that includes releases of information. So if you need to make a referral, if you need to do your collateral contacts, we can still have that coordinated care. Especially if it's a case of safety, we want to be doing those referrals. We just need to be documenting all of this within the medical record.
Thank you, Molly. Sarah Dick was asking if you can screen share on the free version of Zoom. I'm actually not sure off the top of my head, but if anyone else knows.
I'm checking in on it. I'm going to chat Zoom to see. I would assume so, but let me make sure.
Yeah, I think the free version just limits how many people you can have on a call at one time. That's one of the bigger restrictions. Well, thank you all. Please keep the comments coming. I want to switch it over to I guess we've already been doing a bit of discussion, but I wanted to switch it over to you all on the call. We really want to hear from you and how you've been managing this. For folks that either are planning to or are already delivering teletherapy or telepsychiatry, what have been things that have helped you? What have been your challenges and successes? And I'm going to encourage folks to unmute and just share by talking if possible.
Hello, can you hear?
Hi, John Depp.
Hey.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I think I've been struggling mostly with is email. A lot of my patients tell me they don't have email, and I'm thinking, you have a cell phone device. If you have a cell phone device, you must have email. But a lot of them don't even know what their email is. And so the platform that I use, it sends an invitation via email. And so then they can click and stuff. So if they don't have email, that becomes a little bit complicated. So I don't know if you can do it with Zoom, if you can do it through sending a text with a link.
That's what we've been doing. So
Okay.
The thing that we found to be the most effective is we get our admin staff to reach out to them, tell them to download the Zoom app, and then they have that on their phone, and then we send a text with a link to the call, like the link, it's the same as the link that you all clicked to join today. And all they have to do on their phone is hit that, and then it pops them into the session with us. And that kind of short circuits any kind of other issues that you might have with logging on.
I think I can do that with the platform I use, TheraLink. But I have to figure out ways around it, because I just copy the web address with a specific number, and then I can text it to the patients. But I have to like skip some hoops. I can't do it directly from that platform. Anyway, it's been challenging. It's been interesting.
We had that same kind of issue because we technically can't text out of Zoom either. Some people can and some people can't, but we have so many accounts that we're using. So what we ended up doing is we had everyone get a Google Voice number, which you can associate with an email, and then we're texting our clients out of our Google Voice app.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I've been using Google Voice. That's how I was thinking about texting them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonadab. Luke, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to make that point Molly made. The Google Voice, in addition to having a lot of prep for people that's right on their phone if they're going to do the appointment. And I'd say 90% plus of our people are doing their work by phone when they connect with us. So I don't like it as much. I don't like the phone as much because I can't see as much of them. And I would rather them do computer, but that's where they are. They're in the phone land. So Google Voice allows that to be open then from the phone. But then on the other side of the appointment, if we're trying to give them links to videos or to sheets online, or even just tell them when the next appointment's going to be and send some written instruction that's reinforcing what we're doing in spoken words, then that's another way to do that bypasses email, and they may be more open to that. I think about the phone and the computer for a second, and where people hold their phone is usually like really close so they can see you because you're small and they want to see you, but then that doesn't let you see them. So at the first of the session is also coaching them on where they could set their phone so that they can be better seen. Sometimes I had a teenage girl, I think this week or last week, I can't remember when, who didn't want to be seen on the phone. And that was actually a point of conversation and understanding what that was about. And that was actually therapeutically helpful. So I'm just thinking about the setup in that way. And one other thing that I think about with technology that's been really helpful for us, on the Zoom account at least, we have a waiting room feature. And that may be, I see Jonadab shaking his head up and down. So if you don't have a waiting room feature, then whatever link you're sending to people, then when they open it, they'll come straight into the session. And now you've got 2 people in session with you. And a waiting room allows you to have a landing space that doesn't have the screen on yet. Oh, Doxy has it as well. And so you then can create your waiting room with certain messaging on the waiting room so that people know I'll be with you shortly or whatever. You can make that personalized so that they have a landing space and they know they're in the right place and that you'll be with them at the appointed time. Otherwise, you do get people coming in. And when that happens, it's quite unsettling to have 3 people in the same room who one of them may just be testing it out 3 hours ahead of their session. And all of a sudden they're with you, and nobody wants that.
Thank you, Luke. I wanted to open up to other folks to share what your experiences have been. Sarah, Dick, I don't know if you had unmuted for a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to share about the email. I actually had that problem this morning. I was on the phone with the dad and he just could not get the step of opening the email and clicking the link. And we were on the phone for a long time, and he's from Africa, and was some language barrier with English. And I just said, how do you talk to your family? How do you video your family? And he said, WhatsApp. I said, perfect, let's do that. So with Latinx, kind of one pro is a lot of families do video with their families in another country. And so one way to get around the email is just say, how do you video chat with your family? And let's do that, because now that we've been given this freedom from HIPAA, that can help those families where that email or that extra technology step is just really difficult right now.
Thank you. Other folks, challenges, logistical issues.
I guess I just wanted to share that, you know, I know that HIPAA has given us this freedom to be able to use these other unsecure platforms. But my only concern with those is that, you know, how long are they going to allow that to happen? And so I'd rather use a HIPAA compliant already televideo because I feel comfortable. But I understand, I mean, you have to make yourself accessible. So it's really a challenge. I don't know if these changes are going to be permanent or if they're thinking about revising them. I hope not, but I mean.
Yeah, I think that's what we were sharing. Like if you have the capacity, go HIPAA compliant, but also needs must. So sometimes just make do with what we can for now. I guess I wanted to maybe switch it to a slightly different topic. just so this is some concerns that have come up for us as an organization, and just in terms of keeping services going. But then more just on a staffing level, how to keep yourself or your staff sane. I feel like we've been a little bit on overdrive trying to get all of these services going. And then also, how have you all reached out to your community, to your clients, to try to let them know, like, we're doing our best, we're staying in business, and we're trying to reach out to you in these different ways, how to keep them engaged in this difficult time? And I'm going to invite folks that maybe haven't spoken up to, if you feel okay, to step up, and folks that have been speaking a bit to take a step back and let some other folks jump in as well.
Hey Juan, this is Amy from Haven House. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late with another meeting and joined you guys late. But as far as how we're working internally at Haven House, we are using Microsoft Teams, and that's allowed us to definitely continue to work within our organizational structure as far as staying in touch with each other and not feeling so isolated, and that we're not seeing each other, on a daily basis. We're also able to use Microsoft Teams to do the video chatting as well. There's just a call feature on Microsoft Teams that is fairly easy to use to communicate with your coworkers. With regards to how we're trying to stay connected with families, for some families who do have the technology, we're also using WebEx to try to do some of our assessments and some of our clinical support. The challenge, I think, for us with our families is that with their living environments, there's not a lot of opportunity for privacy, and that is presenting probably equally as much of a challenge for us, even with the HIPAA, guidelines being reduced, just not being able to have that additional bedroom or additional space that they can, communicate with us in a more private nature. So that's some of our challenges. As far as how we're staying in touch with our stakeholders and our funders, we are in contact with them almost on a daily basis, and we're trying to do some creative things on Instagram. Like, for instance, in some of our programs where we typically do group work, we're putting information out, like with our boxing program, workouts through Instagram, or with some of our other mentoring programs. We're trying to use that format as a way of staying in contact with our clients. So hopefully that is helpful to someone.
Yeah, I think you highlight some, I think it actually tags in well with Aitza's question about, like, what are some things you've noticed in regards to the clients in teletherapy? Like, are they reluctant? What are some signs to look out for? And I feel like I've seen that, people kind of climbing up, or they're kind of responding, but in a stop-start kind of way. And right. Sometimes you have limitations that are hard to get around.
Yeah.
For sure. What about other folks? It sounds like for you, Amy, at Haven House, you guys have a good organization, but I'm wondering if there's, and we do also at El Futuro, but folks that are out there on their own, outpatient therapists, what are you doing to stay sane, stay connected, keep your services going?
Hi, this is Kenny Parmenter. Can you hear me?
You're a little low, Kenny, but...
I'll see if I can speak into the mic any better. I work with two different organizations. I work with Vecinos Farm Worker Health Program and an organization called Heights, and both of them are still serving clients face-to-face for now. since we haven't been given an order to stay put. We're in two pretty high needs populations. And so tomorrow I'll be going on outreach to work with some farm workers in the field. They have one that was struggling with some anxiety around COVID-19. So I've been doing a lot of prep work to prepare myself to share the medical advice around how to prevent the spread and keep yourself safe. And so I'll be working with the team there and just kind of addressing issues of anxiety. And in telehealth with other clients, it's been difficult to get them to participate with the videos. And so I think I need to take the advice and use some of those formats of like, here's how to screen sharing of how to work through these issues and turn your mic on. But I'm in Western North Carolina and the connectivity is really poor. Like my connectivity has been in and out a few times, and then my client's connectivity is in and out. And so I think the phone calls work better in terms of being able to hear and communicate effectively with clients.
I think that for the week that we were doing phone appointments, it was helpful maybe then to mention to the client something like, there's a resource that I can share with you after the call, or I'm gonna send you a link to the text crisis line, or I'm gonna send you a resource, and then text that resource to them, which I guess we would not normally do. And it's not the same as sharing in real time, but it can be an alternative if the internet connection is not good.
Thank you, Kenny and Magdalena. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I think for us, like we serve a large community, and we are one of the only agencies who serve the Latinx community in Western North Carolina with Vecinos also. So we are using our Facebook page a lot. We created an infographic that is divided in information, basic resources, mental health, and we're constantly updating and posting things about those topics. And we are also gonna start doing some videos, like some short videos, so people can at least see us and hear from us, so they can feel that they are connected with us. And we have had a good response to that.
Excellent, thank you, Jenny. Any other folks? Oh, what your experience has been like?
When there's a request that Jenny shares the Facebook page name, just so it doesn't get lost in the messages.
Yeah,
yes,
Jenny, if you...
Yes, it's La Alianza. I'm gonna post it on the chat.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest. We have one more topic, but I wanted to give it last chance for anyone to share organizationally how you're dealing with these trying times.
Hi everyone. I'm right. Oh, how you talk?
I think we had 3 people jump on. I'm gonna go to I think Anna. I think you're unmuted right now. You can go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. I am working at Mayhack in a more macro setting instead of like client micro space. But in terms of answering the question of how to keep your staff sane and not overburdened, we have been focusing every time that we do check-ins to share something that we're all grateful for. So we've been doing gratitude check-ins. There's been a really great kind of collective change of energy, especially because like deliverables still need to be met and things need to get done. But to start each meeting with a gratitude check-in or a funny story, or having like a group chat with everybody on our team to send like an uplifting message, or sharing a picture of what great recipe we made today, or anything that would be for inspiration purposes, has been keeping us entertained and also hopeful.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely do at El Futuro. We always leave aside a section of celebrations for people to share those things in our meetings, and it's very helpful. Aitza, I think you were also trying to get in. I'm going to go to you.
Yes, I just wanted to say I appreciate this opportunity. As a small practice, we were scrambling to find, we don't use any video conferencing, so that was very hectic few days trying to find what to use, how to communicate and educate us so we can educate our clients. So that has been stressful. So we try to stay phone calls, try to support each other, but this has been an interesting transition. But thank you for this. This helped us to kind of put our thoughts together and hear what has been helpful for others. It's been good. So thank you.
Thank you, Aitza. And that's exactly why we wanted to do this, because we figured that with La Mesita, this is what we do. We're all about supporting all of you all providers around the state. So thank you for that. Pura, I think maybe you wanted to jump in as well.
Yes, at Family Service of the Piedmont, we've been, on Wednesday, we started making phone calls because already we had a lot of no-shows due to what was going on. And if they show, we are seeing some face-to-face, but people are being asked screening questions and taking temperatures. If you have a fever, we're not gonna see you. The agency sent a message through the reminder system with those things. EcoVantage is EcoMend. Teletherapy is embedded in that system, and we were trained yesterday. And not all the computers, not all the desktop have the camera part, but I think some of the therapists have started this today. The therapists in general are sharing resources and worksheets and links that they're sending to their clients. And we are, checking, making sure that we have a good email address. And of course, we're having those challenges. Not everybody has an email address or a good phone or the data capacity to have a session, but if not, we'll still call them. And they know that our doors are still open, and but communicating with them. But I think that was what I was gonna say.
Thank you, Pura.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's something that we are really trying to focus on here in the next week or so, to that messaging out to the community to say we are here, we're open, and we are trying to help. I'm conscious of the time, but I did want to maybe allow a few minutes. How typical of therapists to leave this to the last. But on a human level, wanted to just have us share about how we're doing. I know that this is stressful, obviously for our patients, but definitely for us, and I think it goes beyond just the stress of the work, just general anxiety about the situation, on this worldwide crisis, and then also the issues of working at home and setting boundaries and stopping working at a certain point and enjoying some free time. Like, I'm curious of how folks are dealing with that. And if folks have to jump off, I totally understand. Just wanted to leave some room for this chat.
Juan, can I say something?
Go for it.
I think like for us as therapists, I have a daughter who's a nurse at a hospital, and my oldest daughter lives in New York City and has been exposed to the virus. And I think it's been really important to be able to, in order to be present to my clients, to have self-compassion for myself, and to be able to take time and say, when I'm struggling, this is difficult, and to do what I need so that I can be present to my clients. But if I try to push through and try to be, for example, practice like gratitude, which is wonderful, but not acknowledge first that this is difficult, then it doesn't feel authentic. So I've been really trying to acknowledge these feelings I have, the stress, the worry I have about my own feelings, so that it leaves room so that I can be there for my clients in the way that I need to show up.
Thank you for that, Victoria. I think, yeah, it's good to take that time to have some self-compassion. I wanted to real quick before the next comment, while we have people still on the call, Sophia, can you share the poll? We're just wondering if folks have found this helpful, and if you'd like to have this in future weeks, just kind of a check-in for us to all have the space to share, commiserate, and support one another. So if you can just vote on that real quick. And if folks have found this helpful, we will try to get this up and going in the coming weeks as well. Sophia, I wonder if we can publish. Heck yes, I'll take it. 100%. All right, so we will definitely be doing this moving forward. But yeah, just want to leave a few more moments for folks to share just how you're managing this on a human level. Sorry, I feel like I mismanaged the time, and this is an important part of the conversation. I don't want it to be an afterthought.
I wanted to share, and I typed it in the chat, but there are Facebook groups for teletherapists now, and one of them is teleplay therapy. And, you know, it's interesting because this is an anxious time, but all of the therapists are going through it together. And that means a lot of people are being really generous with sharing resources and ideas and what they're doing on these Facebook pages. And so that's been good for my own mental health, to kind of use the stuff that people are putting out there and not feel like I have to create it all myself. And then people will also post, you know, I had 5 cancellations today, and it just kind of normalizes that this is tough and everyone's caseload has gone down and we're all figuring it out. But that's kind of been helpful, just to feel that we're all in it together and kind of normalize that, yeah, this is tough.
Thank you, Sarah. Other folks? How you're managing?
I just wanted to know, I mean, I know that the governor had the Executive Order 120 in March 23rd, where they closed a bunch of other businesses. Do you know if they have made a decision yet for outpatient clinics or therapists? And if, you know, they have, that's more of a reason why we need to move this direction.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but if anyone else knows.
I mean, I know they close barber shops, restaurants, they close nail salons.
Yeah, I heard that Durham is going to go to a shelter-in-place order today. I'm not sure exactly what that means for businesses or for outpatient clinics specifically.
It seems like there's probably going to be some guidance as towns and cities and counties are making choices about shelter in place or self-containment, about what an essential business is. And so there'll probably be some guidance coming out from that about what qualifies as an essential business.
Thank you, Molly.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but it's like, I'm finding also that for moms and for parents who are homeschooling also, it's been a struggle because all of a sudden you are a teacher now and not everyone has that talent. And I think that what we're telling to our families and for myself is like, just relax with the homework because the teachers are sending a lot of homework, but also enjoy time with your family and take this time to really share your culture, your traditions, your cooking, to teach them Spanish. And that's what we are enforcing. Like, that's our strength. Like, as Latinos, we are close, and now we can pass that to our kids. Sometimes we're saying, oh, they're not talking Spanish. So now is the time that we can pass this to them. And yeah, we can do the homework, but also like take that time to just be with them and share those traditions and our culture with them. And I think that's huge for families because they don't know English. So we're trying to also pair tutors with families so they can help them because that's an additional stress for.
Yeah, I think that's something I was just talking to someone from Univision about this, and just how important it is for folks to try to keep that daily routine as much as possible. And this goes for therapists too. But you've lost that structure somewhat of your daily work life or school life. And I've seen a lot of parents out there just successfully artificially creating a structure for the day, and that can keep you on track. Also, like sleep hygiene, making sure you're going to sleep and waking up at regular times. It's super easy also to come on these calls in your pajamas, but somehow I feel more awake and more ready to do things when I'm fully dressed when I jump on video. So I think little things like that have been helpful. So I'm aware of the time. We're about 10 minutes over, but maybe time for 1 or 2 more comments, and then we'll call it a day today. Okay, I think we'll just call it there. Thank you all so much. It was so great. We got on today. We were like, we're not sure if it's going to be 3 people or 100. We were somewhere in the middle, which was great. So thank you all so much for coming, for sharing your insights and your experiences. And we will definitely be doing this again. So be on the lookout for emails through our multiple networks. We will be sharing the slides and the resources from today via email, so look out for that as well. But send us an email if we leave anything out or if you have any other questions. But thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you soon.